Hello everyone, look who I've bumped into at Computex. I've got Tim here from Monitors Unboxed.
How you going?
I thought this was just a great chance for us to get together and have a chat about all things monitors, everything going on at Computex. We've obviously both got loads and loads of coverage from the event, booth tours, product showcases, but why don't we have a bit of a chat about, I guess, our personal highlights from the week, what we've seen, any kind of insider gossip we've got. I've had various bits and pieces thrown at me stuff that we're allowed to report on, lots that we haven't been allowed to share, but let's have a chat about that kind of stuff, and hopefully this will be interesting to people to kind of supplement our main coverage. Yeah. So what's been the highlight then from a monitor's point of view this year at Computex?
Well, I would like to start with an OLED because I'm wearing an OLED shirt and I talk about OLEDs a lot, but I won't, because I really think that the main highlight for me has been Gigabyte's $300 4K monitor, simply because we like to talk a lot about value. And so while it's not doing anything revolutionary, it's basically the same sort of panels we've seen previously. It's a 27-inch 4K IPS LCD, 160 Hz. It's dual mode as well. We've seen things like that before, but because it's only coming out at $300 US global price outside of tariffs or that sort of thing, the MSRP is supposed to be $300 US. That's very aggressive in my opinion, and it's going to be replacing what we've seen previously, 1440p price points. $300 would get you a 1440p monitor. This year, within a couple of months, you'll be getting a 4K monitor instead. I think that's going to be great for people that buy in the sort of budget class. It's really bringing 4K to the mainstream at that price point. So that's a real highlight for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I saw that. So that's the M27UP.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so they had the black edition, they had the white edition, the ice version that they called it.
Yep.
Both about $300 US. That's the global release price, subject to tariffs and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I agree. I thought that was a really good LCD offering, super competitive price point, dual mode. Nice to see that appearing in LCDs as well. For me, I think I'm torn. I think there's an obvious headline announcement launch, which is all of the 500 Hz QD OLED.
Yeah.
We've got MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, Acer. They're all here with a 500 Hz QD OLED monitor. So I feel like I should definitely mention those. Super high refresh rate. That's now the fastest that you can currently get from any OLED monitor. They've all got slightly different specs and features. MSI and Asus have got their kind of motion sensors for helping to mitigate burn-in risk, turning the display off when it's not in use, slightly different approaches to one another. MSI and Gigabyte have both got DisplayPort 2.1 on theirs.
Yep.
So there's a lot of differences, but they're all coming to the market around sort of that 800 to 900 US kind of price. I think 900 US is the kind of set price actually. So I do need to mention those, but I think for me, the most exciting thing that I saw here was actually another Gigabyte monitor. I think they've done really well this year. They've killed it.
They have, yeah.
They had the world's first 4th gen WOLED LG display primary RGB tandem monitor that I've seen. So
many brand names. Meta 3.0 they put up there too.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of different terms in there, but for those who sort of follow the channel and follow the content, this is the first 4th gen WOLED panel that's going to be released in the monitor space. So it's 27 inches, 1440p, 280 Hertz, but it's got that new panel structure. So they fundamentally changed the structure, the number of emitting layers. There's now 4 instead of 3. So that leads to you don't need to use MLA anymore, and it leads to a brighter, more efficient OLED panel performance.
Nice.
So I thought that was a real highlight. I really didn't expect to see it here. I thought they'd be coming later in the year.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet announcement.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a compelling package overall, because again, you'd expect with the latest generation panel technology that there might be a price premium associated with that, especially as we've seen 1440p WOLEDs and QD OLEDs hitting lower and lower prices. It's been very competitive, but Gigabyte tell us that product will be launching for $500 US. Again, global price, pre-tariffs, all that sort of thing, which is very competitive with the QD OLED products. So even though they're quoting higher brightness specs and new performance characteristics, slightly higher 280 Hertz refresh rate for that sort of mid category than we've seen previously, it's still going to be very affordable, which is great. And I guess they haven't debuted on like a 480 Hertz panel or something like that, because obviously when they changed the subpixel structure for 1440p, the first time we saw that debuted was the 480 hertz instead of the more popular 240 hertz product. So it's good to see that sort of development.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So and they're entering with a mid-tier refresh rate, 280 hertz. That's a little bit higher than I originally expected it to be for these panels, but this is the start of LG Display using that 4th gen WOLED technology across future panels. Mm-hmm. I think that the main benefit that will give people is enhanced brightness, really. So you've got a 1500 nits peak brightness for HDR, 335 nits full screen white brightness, so there's improvements there. It meets VESA Display HDR 500 True Black, so loads of brightness benefits there from the new panel. I thought that was really good, and I think we'll hopefully see more and more launched later this year.
Yeah, I think one of the highlights for me outside of that, because if you weren't going to say that, I was going to say that, right? It was definitely the new Glossy WOLED panel, 32-inch 4K from Asus, using what they're calling, True Black technology. So we've seen Glossy WOLED before from Asus with an exclusive 1440p product, which I quite liked and I recommended quite heavily on the channel because not only was it glossy, it actually had quite good performance in other areas. Now they're going with more of a TV style of glossy finish, which it has some pros and cons, but I think that glossy will be a better experience than what you've seen on that previous 1440p panel. Reduction in grain to 0. So now there is no grain at all.
Really good.
It does have a deeper black experience, and while the reflections, there will be some reflections, more so than a QD-OLED panel. Obviously, it doesn't have the ambient light issues, the purple, grey, I don't know what you call it, like purple hue in sort of brighter environments. So that's going to be a good option for people that wanted things like dual mode, but didn't want the matte finish that was on the existing monitor, because it's basically the same product outside of that. There were I think they added the Neo proximity sensor and that sort of thing as well. But yeah, the nice coating I think is going to be a lot more popular and a lot more competitive, because one of the things we often hear about why people don't buy the WOLED monitors is the matte finish. They want glossy, they see the QD-OLED glossy, they prefer it. And so now if you want the WOLED panel, which I think has some real strengths to it, there'll be a glossy finish that should be quite suitable for people. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think the WOLED panels are popular with the dual mode function. There are 2 versions of that Asus monitor being released. There's a 4K 165 model, 165 hertz model that goes to 330 hertz dual mode. And then there's a 4K 240 hertz that goes to 480 hertz dual mode. So you've got dual mode with WOLED, you've got better ambient light handling, you don't have the raised blacks that kind of plague QD-OLED panels.
No panel dimming.
No panel, the panel dimming is not, not the problem that it is on QD-OLED. But yeah, like you say, I had a chance to see this side by side with a QD-OLED monitor and a matte WOLED monitor. They've removed all of the remaining grain that was a very minor problem, but visible on the 27-inch panel last year. And I thought they looked really good, and I think they'll be really popular choices.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. That brings me on to, I guess, gossip news. I've got some WOLED related gossip that I can share, but what have you heard across the week? What are you that you're allowed to report on? Because obviously we get told a lot of things by product teams and manufacturers. Certain things we can release, certain things we can't. We're not doing it just to be difficult. But what can you tell everybody out there that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing for me was Gigabyte's coming back to WOLED. We know that for sure because they've announced a monitor, and that's a matte monitor. The primary RGB tandem RGB. I forget the order.
Tandem.
It's primary
RGB tandem.
Yeah, okay. Marketing names. So that's a matte panel. Gigabyte are very interested in glossy though. They've heard the feedback from people. They've seen Asus do it previously and have announced new products at Computex for it. And basically they're saying towards the end of this year that there should be some Gigabyte glossy WOLED monitors coming out. I don't know whether that was, finalized production on sale end of this year, but they are basically saying there are prototypes that they're working on at the moment.
Wow,
and
okay.
They should be bringing those to market at some point. It very much sounds like it's not like we're just testing the waters. We're going to see feedback that they seem committed to glossy as well. So then there should be 2 vendors in the market, both Asus and Gigabyte, who are offering not only the QD-OLED and WOLED options, which I think is great because we need more options. WOLED wasn't as widely used, but Gigabyte also going down the glossy path. Not sure whether they'll be able to offer the exact coatings that Asus do, because Asus seems to have exclusivity deals with certain panels, but I'm sure they'll be able to come up with something.
I feel like those are only going to be temporary exclusivity. I don't think Asus are doing anything themselves to the panel, so they're coming from LG Display. They're off the factory line. So it's great. I agree. It was great to see Gigabyte open the door to WOLED again, having been a Samsung Display QD-OLED house for the last few years, pretty much. So you get increased competition there as well. So yeah, that's interesting to hear that they're looking at glossy as well. Asus told me, this was stuff I am allowed to report on, Asus told me that they're exploring other glossy options as well. So they're going to refresh the 27-inch that you referred to a minute ago
the
from last year.
1440p, 240 hertz.
Exactly. They're going to refresh that with the new true black coating to remove the grain. So it goes from, I think it's rated as 3% haze now to 0% haze. So that will be a positive change for people who, and I imagine that will be a particularly competitive price point. And then probably more exciting is they're looking to develop a new 27-inch 1440p 540 hertz WOLED panel, glossy. So that would make it, LG Display have gone from being the fastest OLED panel with their 480 hertz. They've lost that crown recently with all the 500 hertz QD-OLED, and they're going to come back with their own 540 hertz later. So that will also be a primary RGB tandem panel, so a fourth gen panel. Additional brightness. I mean, so super exciting to hear about that. I'm sure, that will be potentially a really great display. So I'd expect to see something on that towards the end of the year, maybe CES, maybe a little bit sooner if we're lucky. But I thought, you've got Asus investing in glossy, and as you said, Gigabyte have told you that they're investing in glossy or looking into glossy. I thought that was great news, I
think there's been a couple of other LCD developments as well. While Gsync Pulsar wasn't really shown off in any huge capacity, it wasn't a focus of the show. That's still very much in development, and will be. I believe the product should be available in the third quarter of this year, probably towards the end, like this sort of September timeframe. At least I think Acer mentioned September for their monitor. I think MSI's one and Asus's one weren't there, but I think they're expecting around a similar timeframe as well. So it's not a dead project. It's coming. So certainly around that sort of time frame. And then we saw as well the Acer 5K 165 Hz LCD was on the show floor, which was announced at CES, which again it's a 5K IPS LCD, the first gaming suitable 5K LCD. They're working closely with NVIDIA on this panel, so that should have Gsync Pulsar as well, which is quite interesting for such a, it's not a super high refresh rate panel. I think it's dual mode as well, but essentially that monitor they're saying is still quite a way off, even though it was announced at CES. I don't think we'll see that until early 2026 personally. They were saying if it comes into mass production this year, it will be very late in the year. So if you're after that 5K gaming panel, which I know wasn't like the hugest topic at the time, but they were showing it here in a nice little corner. They actually had a few troubles getting it work. The prototype they were showing didn't have Pulsar functionality at all. So it was just, that's a future thing that they're trying to work on for that particular product.
I feel like that's going to hit delays because I first saw Asus's 27-inch Gsync Pulsar co-developed with NVIDIA. I saw that at Gamescom last year, so that was August last year. Asus told me this year at Computex, just this week, that, again, like you say, they're not dropping Gsync Pulsar. And people will be pleased with that because I get asked all the time, what's happening with Pulsar. But it's likely to be released towards the end of this year, Q3, but probably shown off at Gamescom again this year. So there's a whole year gap then between prototyping that. So if Acer are only at the prototype stage, that makes me think that their model's not going to be out for a while. They've been quite slow to market with their 27-inch 4K QD-OLED. Everyone else released something in January. Theirs isn't due out until September. It's been launched and announced this week. Their 500 Hz QD-OLED was shown this week and announced this week. I think that's going to come to market a bit later, a few months later than MSI, Gigabyte, Asus. So
I think their 1440p Pulsar monitor is probably on track for a similar time to the other ones. It's just the 5K one for certain. I mean, it's not working right now. So the prototype they have doesn't work with Pulsar, whereas the other prototypes do work with Pulsar right now. So I think that probably tells you how far off that 5K is.
I mean, I'll be interested to hear if you are waiting for Gsync Pulsar, let us know in the comments section. If you've settled on OLED instead, let us know there as well. It'd be interesting to hear what your take is on Gsync Pulsar. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that's, I've been told it's coming and it's not a dead project. I think like other things that I was told, no one's really looking at those kind of ultra large form factor screens anymore, the 42-inch 16 by 9,
that's right.
the 48
that's
inch.
not happening. Yeah.
No, they were the kind of, I guess, the first entry into OLED monitors. They're big.
Yeah, it's like PG42UQ sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think was a product name.
Yeah.
No successor to that.
No.
And LG's, at least Asus also appears to be holding off a bit with, say, like a 45-inch 5K, 2K panel as well.
Yeah, I had my hopes that they might be a second vendor to enter that kind of 45-inch ultra-wide market. They've never had a 45-inch OLED before, so kind of doesn't surprise me. But I think they and others like Gigabyte will probably end up looking at the smaller ultra-wide sizes with 5K, 2K in the future.
I think so. Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of other things that we've heard that hopefully we'll be able to talk about at some point as the sort of plans are finalised. But Computex is a great place to get to chat about directly to product managers who work on these products. And it's a great place that we can also give feedback that we're hearing from you guys. So when we read the comments, we hear things like, WOLED Glossy, for example, being preferred to matte. At trade shows, we feed that back to the product managers directly whenever they ask questions about certain things. So it's just a great platform to learn about that, give feedback, and hopefully we see those developments happen in the market. It's obviously slow moving with monitors. Things happen much, you can't just firmware update a glossy panel. It requires a hardware change. And so, but it's great. I love talking to the engineers and that sort of things about the products that they've got on show.
Absolutely, yeah. Great chance to meet them all. I think you get to see a lot of cool stuff. And, as soon as there's more that we can share, I'm sure we both will. Keep an eye on the sites and our channels, Monitors Unboxed. Obviously, you're on TFT Central right now, but keep an eye out, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll keep you up to date on anything else we hear. But thank you very much for watching, Tim. Thank you for being on briefly. I should say also, look out for the next edition of the Hardware Unboxed podcast. We'll be talking for an hour or more on all things monitors. So if you want to know a lot more about what's been going on this week, all our favourite stuff, top picks, loads more detail, make sure you check that out as well. But cool. Thank you for coming on, Tim.
No worries, it's been great.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.